The wind howled outside, rattling the cabin's windows, but inside, my heart was the storm. I stood by the fireplace, staring at the flames, wondering how I'd ended up here, alone with my stepdaughter, Riley, in a Colorado mountain town, her defiance cutting deeper than the winter cold. By the end of this week, she'd do something that would unravel everything I thought I knew about love, family, and myself. My name is Claire Harper, 38, a high school English teacher from Denver with a life that felt like a checklist. Husband, stepdaughter, mortgage, repeat. My husband, Tom, was away on a work trip, again, leaving me to navigate the holidays with Riley, his 19-year-old daughter from his first marriage. She wasn't mine, not by blood, but I'd raised her since she was 9, pouring my heart into a role that always felt one-sided. Riley was a wildfire, brilliant, unpredictable, and impossible to contain. Her short blonde hair, leather jackets, and sharp tongue made her the opposite of me. Safe, predictable Claire, with my cardigans and lesson plans. This winter vacation was supposed to be a reset. Tom had booked the cabin in Crested Butte, promising a family holiday, but his last-minute conference call left us stranded, just the two of us. I thought I could handle it. I thought I could bridge the gap between us. But Riley had other plans. "Claire, I'm going out," she announced that first evening, zipping up her jacket as she stood by the cabin door. Her blue eyes glinted with something I couldn't read. Anger, maybe, or a secret she wasn't ready to share. "Out? It's snowing, Riley. And it's late." I set down my mug of tea, my voice calm but firm, the way I'd learned to manage her over the years. She rolled her eyes, tossing her scarf over her shoulder. "I'm not a kid anymore. I can handle a little snow." Before I could argue, she was gone, the door slamming behind her. I stood there, the silence of the cabin pressing against me, wondering when we'd stopped being a team. I didn't know then that her late-night walks would lead us somewhere I never expected, somewhere that would challenge everything I believed about love. The next morning, I woke to the smell of coffee. Riley was in the kitchen, her hair a mess, her expression softer than usual. "Made you some," she said, pushing a mug toward me. It was a small gesture, but it felt like a truce. "Thanks," I said, taking a sip. "Where'd you go last night?" She shrugged, leaning against the counter. "Just walked. Met some people at a bar. No big deal." I wanted to press her, to ask why she always pulled away, but I didn't. Instead, I suggested we explore the town together. To my surprise, she agreed. Crested Butte was a postcard, snow-covered streets, twinkling lights, and cozy shops filled with locals and tourists. Riley walked beside me, her hands stuffed in her pockets, her breath forming clouds in the air. I noticed the way she scanned the crowd, like she was looking for someone. "Riley, are you okay?" asked as we stopped at a cafe. She looked at me, her eyes searching mine for a moment before she nodded. "Yeah, just figuring things out." I didn't push. I should have. That afternoon, we wandered into a small bookstore, its shelves packed with used paperbacks and local art. Riley lingered by a display of poetry, her fingers tracing the spine of a book by Audre Lorde. I watched her, struck by how different she seemed here, less guarded, more herself. "You like poetry?" I asked, surprised. She smirked, but there was no malice in it. "You don't know everything about me, Claire." Her words stung, but they were true. I'd spent years trying to be her mom, her friend, her anything, but there were parts of Riley I'd never reached. As we left the bookstore, she slipped the book into her bag, a small act of rebellion I pretended not to see. That evening, back at the cabin, Riley was quieter than usual. She sat on the couch, flipping through the book, her expression distant. I wanted to ask what was wrong, but something held me back. Instead, I made dinner, pasta with marinara, her favorite, and we ate in silence, the crackling fire the only sound. "Claire," she said suddenly, her voice low, Do you ever feel like you're not who you're supposed to be? I froze, my fork halfway to my mouth. Her question hit too close to home. I'd spent years molding myself into the perfect wife, the perfect stepmom, but there was a part of me, buried deep, that never felt quite right. Sometimes, I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. Why do you ask? She didn't answer. Instead, she stood and grabbed her jacket. I'm going for a walk. Riley, wait. But she was already out the door, leaving me with her question and a sinking feeling that something was about to change. The next day, I found a note on the kitchen counter. Gone to meet someone. Back later. My stomach twisted. Who was she meeting? Why wouldn't she tell me? I tried to shake it off, busying myself with chores, but my mind kept drifting to her words. Not who you're supposed to be. What did she mean? By the time she returned, the sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the snow. She looked different, lighter, almost like a weight had lifted. Who were you with? I asked, trying to keep my tone casual. She hesitated, then smiled, a real smile, not the sarcastic one she usually wore. Someone important. I wanted to know more, but her phone buzzed, and she glanced at it, her face lighting up. I gotta go, she said, already heading for the door. Riley, please, I called after her. Talk to me. She paused, her hand on the doorknob, and looked back at me. I will, Claire. Just not yet. As the door closed behind her, I felt a pang of something I couldn't name. Fear, maybe, or longing. I didn't know then that Riley was about to pull me into a world I'd spent my whole life avoiding. The snow fell harder that night, blanketing Crested Butte in a quiet that felt both serene and suffocating. I sat by the cabin window, watching the flakes swirl, my mind tangled with worry and something deeper, something I wasn't ready to face. Riley's cryptic words and sudden absences were pulling at threads I'd kept tightly woven for years. The next morning, I resolved to get answers. Riley was already up, sketching in a notebook at the kitchen table, her coffee untouched. The sight of her, so focused, so unguarded, made my chest ache. I wanted to know her, really know her, but every step closer felt like crossing a minefield. Morning, I said, pouring myself a cup. What are you drawing? She glanced up, startled, then flipped the notebook closed. Just stuff. I nodded, swallowing my frustration. Riley, I'm trying here. You keep shutting me out. Who's this someone important you're meeting? Her eyes flickered with something. Defiance, maybe, or fear. You wouldn't get it, Claire. Try me, I said, my voice softer than I meant it to be. She sighed, pushing her chair back. It's not about you. It's complicated. Before I could respond, she grabbed her jacket and left again, leaving her notebook behind. I stared at it, tempted to open it, to find some clue to the wall between us. But I didn't. Instead, I cleaned the cabin, trying to distract myself from the growing unease in my gut. That afternoon, we went snowshoeing, a compromise to spend time together. The trails wound through pine forests, the air sharp and clean. Riley was quieter than usual, but she didn't pull away when I pointed out a deer in the distance or laughed at my clumsy steps in the snowshoes. For a moment, it felt like we were okay. Then she stopped, her gaze fixed on the horizon. Claire, have you ever loved someone you weren't supposed to? Her question hit like a punch. I thought of Tom, of the early days when love felt like a choice I could make. But there was something else, a memory I'd buried long ago, a college friend, her laughter, the way her hand brushed mine once and left me breathless. I'd pushed it down, called it a phase, but Riley's words brought it roaring back. I don't know, I lied, my voice tight. What about you? She looked at me, her eyes searching, and for a moment, I thought she'd tell me everything. But then she shook her head. Forget it. That evening, I found her notebook open on the couch. I didn't mean to look, but a sketch caught my eye, a portrait of a young woman with dark curls and a shy smile. Beneath it, in Riley's messy scrawl, were the words, "I can't stop thinking about her." My heart stuttered. Her. Riley was in love with a woman. The realization hit me like a wave, not because I judged her, but because it forced me to confront the parts of myself I'd locked away. I closed the notebook, my hands trembling, and sat there until she came back. When she walked in, her cheeks flushed from the cold, I didn't mention the sketch. Instead, I asked, "Want to watch a movie?" She raised an eyebrow, surprised, but nodded. We picked an old rom-com, something light to fill the silence. Halfway through, she leaned her head on my shoulder, a gesture so rare it made my throat tight. "Claire," she murmured, "you're not so bad, you know." I laughed, blinking back tears. "You're not so bad either." The next day, Riley suggested we visit a local art gallery. I agreed, hoping it would keep her close, give me a chance to understand her. The gallery was small but vibrant, filled with paintings of mountains and abstract sculptures. Riley lingered by a piece, a watercolor of two hands reaching for each other, their fingers just shy of touching. "It's beautiful," I said, standing beside her. "Yeah," she whispered. "It feels real." I glanced at her, catching the sadness in her eyes. "Riley, whoever this person is, you can tell me. I'm here." She bit her lip, then shook her head. "It's not that simple. She's not like me. She's scared." I wanted to ask more, but a voice interrupted us. "Riley." We turned to see a young woman, maybe 20, with dark curls and a nervous smile, the same face from Riley's sketch. She wore a red coat, her hands fidgeting with the straps of her bag. "Hey, Lena," Riley said, her voice softening in a way I'd never heard. Lena glanced at me, then back at Riley. "I didn't know you'd be here." "Claire, this is Lena," Riley said, her tone careful. "She's a friend." I nodded, my mind racing. Lena was the someone important. The way Riley looked at her, hopeful, vulnerable, told me everything. "Nice to meet you," I said, forcing a smile. Lena mumbled a greeting, then excused herself, saying she had to go. Riley watched her leave, her shoulders slumping. "Riley," I said gently, "is she the one you're figuring things out with?" She didn't answer, but her silence was enough. We left the gallery, the air between us heavy with unspoken truths. That night, Riley didn't go out. She stayed in, sketching by the fire, her face a mask of longing and frustration. I wanted to help her, to tell her it was okay, but I didn't know how. Not when I was still grappling with my own buried feelings. As I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, I realized this trip wasn't just about Riley's secrets, it was about mine too. The cabin felt smaller each day, as if Riley's unspoken truths and my own buried ones were pressing the walls inward. I woke to the sound of her pacing, her boots thudding softly against the wooden floor. By the time I got up, she was gone again, leaving only a note. "Be back later." Don't worry. But I did worry about her, about Lena, about the parts of myself I'd ignored for too long. That morning, I walked into town alone, hoping the crisp air would clear my head. Crested Butte was alive with holiday cheer. Families skiing, couples laughing over hot cocoa, but I felt like an outsider, carrying a secret I hadn't even admitted to myself. Riley's question about loving someone you weren't supposed to echoed in my mind, stirring memories of Sarah, my college friend. Her smile, her voice, the way my heart raced when she was near. I'd called it friendship, but it was more. I'd run from it, married Tom, built a life that felt safe. But safe wasn't the same as true. Back at the cabin, Riley returned around noon, her expression stormy. "Lena's leaving tomorrow," she blurted, tossing her jacket on the couch. "Her parents are making her go back to Denver." I sat down, gesturing for her to join me. "Why don't you tell me about her?" She hesitated, then sat, her hands twisting in her lap. "Lena, she's amazing, Claire. She's funny and kind, but she's scared. Her family's super religious. She thinks they'll disown her if they find out she trailed off, her voice breaking. Gay, I said softly, testing the word. Riley nodded, her eyes meeting mine.
Yeah.
Like me. The air shifted, heavy with her confession. I reached for her hand, squeezing it gently. I'm proud of you, Riley, for knowing who you are. She pulled her hand away, her jaw tight. It's not that simple. Lena's not ready to admit it. She keeps pushing me away, but I know she feels it too. I wanted to tell her it would be okay, but I knew better. Love like that, love that society judged, was a battle. I'd fought it myself, though I'd never had the courage to admit it. Let's do something fun today, I said, desperate to lighten the mood. Skiing? Riley managed a small smile. Only if you promise not to fall on your face. We spent the afternoon on the slopes, laughing as I stumbled and cheering when Riley nailed a tricky run. For a few hours, it felt like we were just Claire and Riley, not stepmom and stepdaughter, not two people carrying secrets. But as we rode the lift back up, her phone buzzed. She read the message, her face falling. Lena? I asked. She nodded. She wants to meet tonight. Alone. I swallowed my worry, forcing a nod. Just be careful, okay? That evening, I stayed behind, trying to focus on a book while Riley was out. But my mind kept drifting to her, to Lena, to the life I might have lived if I'd been braver. When Riley returned, her eyes were red, her voice raw. She's gone, she said, slumping onto the couch. She said she can't do this. She's too scared. I sat beside her, my heart aching. I'm so sorry, Riley. She shook her head, tears spilling over. I thought I could change her mind. I thought maybe she loved me enough. I pulled her into a hug, letting her cry against my shoulder. As I held her, I realized how much I envied her courage, her willingness to love so openly, even when it hurt. The next day, Riley was quieter, her spark dimmed. We went ice skating at a local rink, but her heart wasn't in it. As we laced up our skates, she looked at me, her voice barely audible. Do you think it's worth it? Loving someone when it hurts this much? I thought of Sarah, of the years I'd spent pretending that part of me didn't exist. I think loving someone, even if it hurts, means you're alive. It means you're brave. She studied me, her eyes narrowing. You sound like you know what it's like. I froze, my pulse racing. I don't know, I stammered, looking away. Riley didn't push, but I felt her watching me, like she could see through the walls I'd built. That night, as we sat by the fire, she opened her notebook and showed me a new sketch, a self-portrait, her face half-shadowed, her eyes full of pain. This is me right now, she said. Broken, but still here. You're not broken, I said, my voice fierce. You're stronger than you know. She gave me a sad smile. Maybe. But what about you, Claire? What's your story? Her question caught me off guard, and for a moment, I almost told her about Sarah, about the part of me I'd buried. But I couldn't. Not yet. Instead, I said, let's just focus on you for now. As she nodded and turned back to her sketch, I felt a crack in my carefully constructed life. Riley's honesty, her pain, her courage, they were forcing me to confront my own truth. And I wasn't sure I was ready. The next morning, the cabin was too quiet, the weight of Riley's heartbreak hanging in the air. I found her on the porch, wrapped in a blanket, staring at the snow-covered mountains. Her vulnerability made me ache, not just for her, but for the part of me I'd silenced years ago. Want company? I asked, stepping outside. She shrugged but didn't say no, so I sat beside her, the cold biting through my sweater. You don't have to talk, I said. But I'm here. She nodded, her breath visible in the frosty air. I keep thinking about what I could have done differently. With Lena. I wanted to tell her there was nothing she could have done, that love doesn't always bend to our will. But instead, I said, you were honest with her. That's more than most people can say. She looked at me, her eyes sharp. What about you, Claire? Are you honest with yourself? Her question hit like a blade, slicing through years of denial. I opened my mouth to deflect, but nothing came out. Riley's gaze held mine, steady and unyielding, and for the first time, I felt exposed. I try to be, I said finally, my voice barely audible. She didn't push, but her silence was louder than words. We sat there, watching the sunrise paint the snow pink, and I realized I couldn't keep running for myself. Not when Riley was laying her heart bare. That day, we stayed close to the cabin, baking cookies and playing board games like we used to when she was younger. It felt like a fragile peace, a moment of normalcy in the storm of emotions. But as we laughed over a botched batch of gingerbread, I caught her staring at me, her expression unreadable. "What?" I asked, wiping flour from my cheek. "You're different here," she said. "Less stiff. Like you're actually you." Her words stung, but they were true. Away from Denver, from Tom, from the life I'd built, I felt lighter, like I could breathe. But that freedom came with a cost. It meant facing the truths I'd buried. That evening, Riley got a text that changed everything. Her phone buzzed as we were cleaning up dinner, and her face lit up when she read it. "It's Lena," she said, her voice trembling with hope. "She's back in town. She wants to talk." My stomach twisted, a mix of worry and something else. Envy, maybe, for her courage to chase what she wanted. "Are you sure you're ready for this?" I asked. "I have to be," she said, grabbing her jacket. "I need to know." She left, and I was alone again, the cabin's silence amplifying my thoughts. I poured a glass of wine and sat by the fire, my mind drifting to Sarah. I hadn't thought of her in years, but now her memory was relentless, the way her laughter filled a room, the way her touch lingered in my dreams. I told myself it was nothing, but Riley's openness was forcing me to admit it was everything. Hours later, Riley burst through the door, her face a mix of joy and fear. "She kissed me," she said, her voice shaking. "Lena kissed me, Claire. She said she's scared, but she wants to try. With me." I stood, my heart racing with a mix of pride and panic. That's amazing, Riley." She paced, her energy electric. "I don't know what to do. What if she changes her mind again? What if her family finds out?" I took her hands, steadying her. "You'll figure out together. Just don't let fear stop you." Her eyes searched mine, and for a moment, I thought she saw through me, saw the woman who'd let fear stop her. "Thanks, Claire," she said, pulling me into a hug. The next day, Riley was a whirlwind, planning to meet Lena again. I watched her, marveling at her resilience, her willingness to risk everything for love. It made me feel small, cowardly. As she left for town, I made a decision. I couldn't keep hiding. I pulled out my phone and searched for Sarah. It didn't take long to find her. She was a photographer now, living in Seattle, her Instagram filled with vibrant landscapes and candid portraits. My heart pounded as I scrolled through her photos, lingering on one of her smiling, her dark hair streaked with gray. She looked happy. Free. I typed a message, my fingers trembling. "Hey, it's Claire. Been a long time. Can we talk?" I didn't send it. Not yet. But holding the phone, staring at her face, I felt a spark of something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. When Riley came back, she was glowing, her smile brighter than the snow outside. "Lena's staying," she said. "She told her parents she's not going back to Denver yet. We're going to figure this out." I hugged her, my heart swelling. "I'm so proud of you." She grinned, then tilted her head. "What about you? You look different." I laughed, brushing it off. "Just happy for you." But as we sat down to dinner, I knew it was more than that. Riley's courage was a mirror, reflecting my own fears and my own possibilities. For the first time, I wondered if I could be as brave as my stepdaughter. The snow kept falling, a relentless reminder that our time in Crested Butte was running out. Riley's happiness was a bright spot, but it cast a shadow over my own unresolved feelings. Every time I looked at my unsent message to Sarah, my courage faltered, but Riley's fearless pursuit of Lena was pushing me toward a reckoning. The next morning, Riley was up early, humming as she made breakfast. "Lena's coming over today," she announced, flipping a pancake with a grin. "Is that cool?" "Of course," I said, my smile genuine but strained. I was thrilled for her, but the thought of meeting Lena, of seeing Riley's love up close, stirred something in me I couldn't name. Lena arrived around noon, her dark curls tucked under a beanie, her eyes shy but warm. She was softer than I'd expected, her voice quiet but steady as she greeted me. "Thanks for letting me come by, Miss Harper." "Call me Claire," I said, waving her in. "And you're welcome anytime." Riley beamed, linking her arm with Lena's as they settled on the couch. Watching them, I felt a pang, not of jealousy, but of longing. Their ease, their tentative touches, reminded me of what I'd never allowed myself to have. We spent the afternoon playing cards, the cabin filled with laughter and teasing. Lena was quick-witted, matching Riley's sarcasm with a gentle humor that softened her edges. I caught myself watching them, marveling at how natural they seemed together, how unafraid they were to show it, even if just in small ways. After Lena left, Riley turned to me, her eyes bright. "She's great, right?" "She is," I said, meaning it. "You two are good together." Riley's smile faltered, and she sat down, her voice serious. "Claire, I know this is weird for you. Me being me. But thanks for not freaking out." I reached for her hand, my heart pounding. "Riley, I'd never freak out. I just want you to be happy." She studied me, her gaze piercing. "What about you? Are you happy?" The question hit harder than I expected. I thought of Tom, of our comfortable but distant marriage, of the life I'd built to avoid facing myself. "I'm trying to figure that out," I admitted. She nodded, like she understood more than I was saying. "You should, Claire. You deserve it." That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat by the window, staring at the snow, my phone heavy in my hand. Riley's words echoed in my head, mingling with memories of Sarah. I opened the message again, my thumb hovering over the send button. What was I afraid of? Rejection? Ruining my life? Or was it the possibility that Sarah might say yes, and I'd have to face the truth I'd buried for so long? The next day, Riley and Lena went skiing, leaving me alone with my thoughts. I wandered into town, my feet carrying me to the bookstore where Riley had bought her poetry book. I found myself in the same aisle, my fingers brushing over a collection by Adrienne Rich. I bought it, tucking it under my arm like a secret. Back at the cabin, I read, the words cutting through me like a knife. Rich's poems spoke of love, of identity, of the courage to claim both. I thought of Riley, of how she'd faced her fears with Lena, and I felt a spark of resolve. I typed a new message to Sarah. "Hey, it's Claire. I've been thinking about you. Can we talk?" This time, I hit send. The wait was agonizing. I busied myself with dinner, trying to ignore the phone buzzing with notifications that weren't from her. When Riley and Lena returned, their cheeks flushed from the cold, I forced a smile, hiding my nerves. "Everything okay?" Riley asked, her eyes narrowing. "Yeah," I lied, stirring the soup. "Just tired." Lena stayed for dinner, and the three of us talked about everything and nothing, movies, music, the ridiculousness of ski lift lines. But my mind was elsewhere, waiting for a response that might never come. After Lena left, Riley lingered at the table, her expression serious. "Claire, I need to tell you something." My heart sank, bracing for bad news. "What is it?" "Lena's parents, they found out about us. She told them today." I set down my glass, my stomach twisting. "What happened?" "They're not happy," she said, her voice steady but strained. "They want her to come home. But she's staying. For me." I reached for her, pride and fear warring inside me. That's huge, Riley. Are you okay? She nodded, tears in her eyes. I'm scared, but I'm not giving up. She's worth it. Her words hit me like a wave, echoing the choice I was facing. As I hugged her, my phone buzzed. My heart stopped when I saw the name. Sarah. Claire? Wow, it's been forever. I'd love to talk. Call me? I stared at the message, my hands trembling. Riley noticed, her eyes widening. Who's that? I swallowed, my voice barely a whisper. Someone important. She grinned, a knowing look in her eyes. Go for it, Claire. As she headed to her room, I sat there, the phone warm in my hand, the weight of my past and my future pressing down. Riley's courage had lit a fire in me, and I wasn't sure I could put it out. The cabin's warmth couldn't touch the chill in my bones as I stared at Sarah's message. Riley's courage had pushed me to reach out, but now, with her response staring back at me, I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff. One call could change everything or break it. The next morning, Riley was a bundle of nervous energy, pacing as she talked about Lena. Her parents are coming to Crested Butte tomorrow, she said, her voice tight. They want to talk sense into her. I set down my coffee, my heart aching for her. What does Lena want? She wants to stay with me, Riley said, her jaw set. But she's terrified. She doesn't know if she can stand up to them. I reached for her hand, squeezing it. You'll be there for her. That's what matters. She nodded, but her eyes were distant. What if I'm not enough? You are, I said fiercely. You're enough, Riley. Her gaze softened, and she hugged me, a rare moment of closeness that made my throat tight. As she pulled away, she glanced at my phone. You gonna call that someone important? I laughed, my cheeks flushing. Maybe. Do it, she said, her tone serious. Don't wait, Claire. Life's too short. Her words stayed with me as I cleaned the cabin, trying to distract myself from the call I hadn't made. By afternoon, I couldn't stand it anymore. I stepped onto the porch, the snow crunching under my boots, and dialed Sarah's number. Claire? Her voice was warm, familiar, like no time had passed. Hey, I said, my voice shaking. I didn't expect you to answer. She laughed, soft and easy. I didn't expect you to call. What's going on? I took a breath, the cold air steadying me. I'm in Crested Butte with my stepdaughter. She's going through something, and it's making me think about a lot. About us. Back then. There was a pause, and I braced for rejection. But then she said, I think about you too, Claire. More than you know. We talked for an hour about her life, her work, the years we'd lost. She was single, living her truth, unapologetically herself. I envied her, but I also felt a spark of possibility. When we hung up, I promised to call again. Riley noticed the change in me when she got back from seeing Lena. You called her, didn't you? She said, grinning. I nodded, my heart lighter. Yeah, I did. She high-fived me, her laughter filling the cabin. Look at us, Claire. Figuring it out. The next day, Lena's parents arrived. Riley asked me to come with her to meet them, to support Lena. I agreed, my nerves jangling as we walked to a cafe in town. Lena was already there, her face pale, her parents sitting stiffly across from her. Riley, Lena said, standing as we entered. She looked at me, her eyes pleading. This is Claire, my Riley stepmom. Her parents, a stern-looking couple in their 50s, nodded curtly. We're here to bring Lena home, her father said, his voice cold. Lena's hands shook, but she stood taller. I'm not going. I love Riley. I'm staying. The words hung in the air, heavy and defiant. Riley reached for Lena's hand, and I saw the strength in both of them, the kind I'd never had at their age. Lena's mother started to argue, but I stepped in, my teacher's voice calm but firm. She's an adult, I said. She's making her choice. You don't have to understand it, but you need to respect it. Lena's father glared, but her mother softened, tears in her eyes. We just want what's best for her. I know, I said, my voice gentler. But Lena knows what's best for her. The conversation was tense, but by the end, Lena's parents agreed to give her space. As we left the cafe, Lena hugged me, tears streaming down her face. Thank you, Claire. Riley looked at me, her eyes shining with pride. You're kind of a badass, she said. I laughed, but inside, I was reeling. Standing up for Lena had felt right, like I was finally on the right side of my own heart. That night, I called Sarah again, and we talked until midnight, our voices weaving a bridge across the years. As I hung up, Riley poked her head out of her room. You're smiling, she said. It's weird. Get used to it. I shot back, grinning. The next morning, Riley and Lena planned a day hike, and I decided to join them, craving the clarity of the mountains. As we trekked through the snow, I watched them, Riley's hand in Lena's, their laughter echoing through the trees. I felt a pang of joy, but also a question. Could I be that brave? Back at the cabin, I opened the poetry book I'd bought, reading lines about love and freedom. Each word felt like a step toward myself, toward the life I'd been too scared to claim. Riley's journey was becoming my own, and I wasn't sure where it would lead. The final days of our vacation loomed, and the cabin felt like a cocoon, safe, but temporary. Riley's happiness with Lena was a beacon, illuminating the parts of my life I'd kept in the dark. Every conversation with Sarah, every moment of Riley's courage, was pushing me toward a truth I couldn't ignore. That morning, Riley and Lena were inseparable, planning their future in hushed, hopeful tones. I watched them from the kitchen, my heart swelling with pride, but aching with the weight of my own choices. I'd spent years building a life with Tom, but it felt like a house of cards, ready to collapse under the truth I was beginning to face. Claire, you okay? Riley asked, catching me staring. I nodded, forcing a smile. Just thinking. She raised an eyebrow but didn't press. Instead, she dragged me into town for a holiday market, Lena trailing behind, her shyness melting in Riley's presence. The market was alive with music, lights, and the smell of roasted chestnuts. I bought a scarf for Riley, a small gesture that made her grin. You're getting soft, she teased, wrapping it around her neck. Maybe, I said, my voice catching. Or maybe I'm just learning from you. Her eyes softened, and for a moment, I thought she'd ask what I meant. But Lena called her over to a stall, and the moment passed. That afternoon, I called Sarah again, my heart racing as I told her about Riley, about the trip, about the feelings I'd buried. I think I loved you back then, I said, my voice trembling. And I was too scared to admit it. Sarah was quiet for a moment, then said, I loved you too, Claire. I still do, in a way. Her words broke something open in me, grief, joy, possibility. We talked about meeting after the trip, about what it might mean to reconnect. When I hung up, I felt lighter, like I'd taken the first step toward myself. That evening, Riley and Lena cooked dinner, their laughter filling the cabin. I watched them, marveling at how they'd found each other, how they were fighting for their love despite the odds. After dinner, Lena went home, and Riley sat with me by the fire, her expression serious. Claire, I need to ask you something, she said, her voice low. Are you like me? My breath caught, my heart pounding. I could lie, deflect, keep hiding. But looking into her eyes, I couldn't. I think I might be, I said, the words heavy and liberating. I'm still figuring it out. She nodded, her face softening. I knew there was something. You get it, don't you? What it's like to love someone you're not supposed to. Tears stung my eyes as I nodded.
Yeah, I do.
She hugged me, fierce and tight, and for the first time, I felt like we were equals, not stepmom and stepdaughter, but two women facing the same truth. The next day, our last in Crested Butte, Riley and Lena invited me to a local concert, a small folk band playing in a cozy venue. The music was raw, emotional, and as I watched Riley and Lena sway together, I felt a clarity I hadn't known was possible. I didn't have all the answers, but I knew I couldn't go back to the life I'd been living. Back at the cabin, I packed slowly, my mind on Tom, on Sarah, on the future. Riley noticed, sitting on my bed as I folded clothes. "What are you going to do when we get home?" she asked. I paused, a sweater in my hands. "I don't know."
Talk to your dad, I guess.
"Be honest." She nodded, her eyes steady. "You can do it, Claire. You're stronger than you think." Her words carried me through the night, through the long drive back to Denver. When we got home, Tom was waiting, his smile tired but warm. I hugged him, but it felt different, distant, like I was already letting go. That night, as Riley slept, I sat down with Tom. "We need to talk," I said, my voice steady despite the fear in my chest. He frowned, sensing the weight of my words. "What's wrong?" I took a breath, Riley's courage echoing in my mind. "I haven't been honest. Not with you, not with myself. I think I'm gay." The words hung between us, heavy and final. Tom's face fell, but he didn't argue, didn't yell. He just listened as I told him about Sarah, about the years I'd spent hiding, about the woman I was finally ready to become. It wasn't easy. There were tears, questions, pain. But there was also relief, like I'd finally set down a burden I'd carried too long. As I went to bed, my heart heavy but free, I knew this was just the beginning. Riley had shown me what it meant to be brave, to love without fear. And now it was my turn to live that truth. The morning after my talk with Tom, the house felt different, quieter, but not empty. Riley was in the kitchen, making coffee, her presence a steady anchor in the storm of my new reality. She'd changed my life, not just by being herself, but by showing me I could be too. "Morning," she said, sliding a mug toward me. "You okay?" I nodded, taking a sip.
Yeah.
"Just processing." She studied me, her eyes soft but searching. "You told Dad, didn't you?" I swallowed, the weight of last night's conversation still heavy.
Yeah.
It was hard, but it was the right thing. She grinned, a mix of pride and relief. "You're kind of a badass, Claire." I laughed, the sound easing the tension in my chest. I learned from the best. The days that followed were a blur of change. Tom and I agreed to separate, a decision that hurt but felt inevitable. He was kind, understanding, but the distance between us had always been there, masked by routine. Riley stayed close, checking in on me, her support a lifeline as I navigated this uncharted path. I called Sarah again, and we made plans to meet in Seattle. The thought of seeing her, of exploring what might be, filled me with equal parts fear and excitement. But Riley's courage was a constant reminder. Love was worth the risk. One evening, as we sat on the couch, Riley showed me a new sketch, a portrait of her and Lena, their hands intertwined, their smiles radiant. "We're gonna make it work," she said, her voice steady. "No matter what." I hugged her, tears in my eyes. "I know you will." She pulled back, her expression serious. "What about you? What's next for Claire Harper?" I smiled, the question no longer terrifying. "I'm going to find out who I am, really am, and I'm going to live it." Riley nodded, her eyes shining. "That's my stepmom." The weeks turned into months, and life began to take shape again. I moved into a small apartment, started therapy, and kept in touch with Sarah. Our conversations grew deeper, our connection stronger, and when I finally visited her in Seattle, it felt like coming home. Riley and Lena faced their own challenges. Lena's parents were slow to accept her, but she held firm, and Riley was there every step of the way. They moved in together, a small act of defiance that felt like a victory. One winter evening, a year after Crested Butte, Riley invited me to dinner at their place. The apartment was small but warm, filled with art and laughter. As we ate, Lena raised a glass, her smile shy but genuine.
To Claire, she said.
For helping us get here. I blushed, shaking my head. You two did the hard work. Riley grinned, nudging me. Yeah, but you didn't suck as a wingman. We laughed, the sound filling the room, and for the first time, I felt whole. Not just Claire the teacher, the wife, the stepmom, but Claire, the woman who'd finally claimed her truth. That night, as I walked home under a starry sky, I thought of Crested Butte, of the snow, of Riley's courage and Lena's strength. They'd shown me that love, in all its forms, was worth fighting for. And as I unlocked my door, my phone buzzed with a message from Sarah. Can't wait to see you again. I smiled, my heart full. Riley had done something that winter that changed my life. She'd shown me how to be brave, how to love without fear, how to live as myself. And now, I was ready to write the next chapter, not just for her, but for me.